Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Rent Prep for Landlords. You got Eric Worrell here. Steve is, doing that normal thing where he's in the office next door to me, but he won't be on today's podcast. We're a little busy. But I got a special guest in the office today who's actually a buddy from high school who, I don't know, I probably don't run into him too often. But, we've talked about being on the podcast because he's involved in real estate. So he's actually in the office. People really meet in person still. It feels weird, right, Jesse?
It does feel kind of weird. These microphones are something else.
Yeah.
I'm sure they won't matter in a minute.
But we're just going to kind of catch up and go over Jesse's track through real estate and like kind of how you got started and see what kind of, things you can share of what you've learned along the way. Because you're at what, 10 rental properties right now?
I think we're at 10 properties total. The total amount was 10. We just sold a couple off now that I think about it. So
yeah. So we're going to get some insights from Jesse and just kind of, more so than anything, just catch up. So why don't we get to that right after this?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Welcome to the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And now your hosts, Stephen White and Eric Worrell.
So I'm really excited about this, Jesse, because I remember in high school that, we were both numbskulls, right? We were teenage boys. So I know that I was probably the most mature person anyone had ever met, and so were you.
That's saying a lot for me, man.
But it's really funny because I would go to these events and we both live in the Buffalo market and like I'd randomly see you, maybe out at a bar or a restaurant or something like that.
Yeah, you and your wife out at a bar all the time. I'm like, man, Eric, what's up?
Yeah.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, back before, I had the baby.
Yeah.
When I went out, but we'd always kind of catch up and we would talk about real estate because we were both involved with real estate, but me more so with working at Rent Prep and background screening and education and doing this kind of marketing end of things. And then with you've been building in real estate since you were in college. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So like, how did you get started with real estate?
So basically, it was like a three-pronged thing. Like growing up, my mother's father owned a couple residential income properties that he had picked up along the way. One that he grew up in and the two on either side of it kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. The two on either side of it, one was, they were mixed use. So they were like a barber shop and a delicatessen. Yeah. And coming up from the Depression, they diversified their income. He worked at the steel plant. He also bought these properties and ran these businesses and got rent. So from a very young age, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, we were constantly going over there and servicing the properties. Mm-hmm. And they were, low income, sometimes troubled tenant, type of properties. And the neighborhood had changed so much that, it was just one of those situations where it was probably on a decreasing, downward spiral type of thing. But, he managed them himself. And we would go over there and do the work, whether it was, plumbing in the basement and getting covered in sewage once we unplugged the drain, or painting or
and you're like, what?
Work.
I want to do this forever.
Sewer. It wasn't that I wanted to do it forever. It was impressive to learn from someone like that you could take care of these problems yourself. Yeah. And that's how I grew up between my grandfather on my mom's side, my grandfather on my father's side. My mother, my father, that's how they were. We did everything ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that was my first exposure. Was I guess grew up with it, but I would never have thought then. And then fast forward to college, it was just the Canisius market was just inundated with student rental properties all around the off-campus spread, around the nucleus of the campus. So I went to school there. I was commuting. My freshman year, I got in a car accident my second semester early on. Couldn't go to school anymore. Was actually looking at the dome from ECMC from the window. I was like all laid up in a wheelchair, all messed up. Yeah. And I was like, oh, geez, I was supposed to be in class there, but I'm here in the hospital and I don't know when I'm going to get back to class. So I ended up learning real quick right then, no car, couldn't get into a dorm because the dorming period had changed or had passed. Yeah. So I was just like, okay, well, shoot, I got to really think about how I'm going to start back up at school. Little did I know, like everything changed for me after that point, but we found a student rental. I got a couple buddies together, Alex Khalil and a couple other guys. And we just kind of made this hodgepodge of 4 guys to get into a 4-bedroom apartment. And we found one at the last minute, the 11th hour. And
so at this point, you guys were renting?
We were renting at this point. Yeah. Yep. And then that's kind of what started my transformation of like, okay, I live in this apartment. It's an apartment house. I think there's 24 beds between the 6 apartments that were in it. It's like the biggest apartment house you've ever seen in the city. I think it might be one of the biggest apartment houses, old school apartment houses in the city of Buffalo. But it's right there at Canisius College, and the landlord that ran it, he's a great guy. I ended up having a lot of respect for him afterward. But when we were living there, it was just two different. You're on one side of the fence. Yeah, opposing. Yeah, you're opposing, button heads all the time. So you have your perspective when you're there doing your tenant thing, and then you have your perspective afterward when you become a landlord.
So Jesse, did you like have a moment where you were living in this rental property though, and you're kind of starting to do numbers and thinking about like, all right, how many units did you say was in that rental?
I believe it was 6 units, 26 or 24 beds.
24 beds. And how much are you paying a month? $300. So you're just starting to do the math and you're like, all right, for anybody who doesn't know, like Canisius College area in Buffalo is not like a great, hotbed of like, really expensive rentals. Like you might be able to buy a rental property there under $100,000, right?
Not anymore, but at the time, yeah.
At that time, yeah. So you're starting to do this and you're thinking about, what do I want to do next? Like, where did you go from there? I think we were talking earlier, you said you actually got into like property management of some sort.
Yeah. So basically what happened was I transitioned from being, the tenant to, an investor. So through that opportunity that I saw by living there, and I was kind of bit by the bug. And that particular market for an investor is, for lack of a better term, it's like crack. I mean, it's the numbers from an investment standpoint, no matter how generalized they are insane.
Yeah.
ROI, cash on cash return, just in terms of monthly positive cash flow, it's insane. So for the type of properties and housing and residential properties that they are, to the type of money that they actually bring in, it's just, it's probably very similar across the nation in terms of student rentals or whatever.
More headaches, but higher
headaches, but
flow.
higher return. So, and you learn how to mitigate some of those headaches along the way. And it's, the number one thing you hear from people is like, oh, student housing. Oh my God, why would you want to do that? Well, I can show you on paper why. So that's what I realized at that point. So then what happened was I started to, and it's funny, I didn't read any real estate books until after college.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't read a Kiyosaki book. I didn't read anything like that until after. And actually what happened was there was an affirmation of what I had already developed on my own. And it's not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but it's just, it was a good feeling to know that there's respected people who are putting out books about the things that I'm trying to do. And I'm like, wow, I already kind of discovered some of this stuff on my own, just tripping over my own feet. And I'm like, okay, cool. So what happened with that was that I saw that opportunity at the apartment house. I thought could be a better landlord. I thought I had a better pulse, thumb on the pulse of what off-campus living was like for both students and for investors. So I took that opportunity and we started to market in the neighborhood, guerrilla market, to homeowners. Hey, I would like to buy your house.
Yeah.
And I, out of nowhere, this was the
Were
time
you doing
frame.
Like flyers or
foot
So you never read anything about this. You just thought, hey, you never heard of driving for dollars. You just, I'm going to do this. Yep.
No clue, bro. I was like 18, 19 years old, like trying to get a degree. And but I got bit by this bug. I mean, and to be fair, like we said before, kind of, it's like, this house has got 24 or 26 beds. At the time they were pulling in $250 a room.
Yeah.
Okay. And the numbers on that are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think the guy bought it for like $31,000 and maybe had a refi on it for 60 something.
So
he was kind of just,
he's pulling like over $5,000 a month.
Ridiculous numbers
on
for
a $30,000
ROI is ridiculous. Like his cash on cash is ridiculous. Like, and the guy's no dummy. I think he was a security guard or something like that before he got into property management development and landlording or whatever, rehabbing and holding. So, and like I said, I got tremendous respect for him. But again, I thought I could do things a little bit differently just because of my position. So I marketed flyers on foot, knew a lot of neighbors already. You you walk the campus, you got to go to school. You see people out, you say hello. At least I did.
Yeah.
And
doesn't surprise me.
And and we landed something in a better part, or what I considered a little bit of a closer, better location than where we were, on the other street of campus, a little bit closer to school. And it was just one of those situations where, you read about it. What's this person's motivation for selling their property? How can you bring value to them through this transaction. Yeah. And they hit me up. They were 2 out-of-town people, brother and sister. Their mother or their grandmother, I think it was, had passed away. No one wanted the house. Everyone lives out of Buffalo. Yeah. They're like, well, yeah, we'll take X for it. And I convinced, my parents to make the investment. And I said, this is why I want to do this. I go, I'm going to school. I'm going to get my degree. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to do this forever. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do this when I get out of school. Because back then, if you remember, people were going to school, they were getting their degrees, but not everybody was working in their field. I mean, there was this transitionary period where people weren't getting jobs.
Yeah, you're going to college because that's what you're supposed to do. And then you get out, and it was pretty much 2007, 2008. And
2007, 8, 9, what happens? The market crashes. So it was a very difficult time for people of our generation, our age, to come out and be instantly successful and then live the dream of going to school, getting a degree, working in your field. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall as early as maybe 04, 05 for myself personally. But then I said, okay, I'm devising this system. I go, there's a ton of positive cash flow to be gained here for a minimal type of investment.
What was the, if you don't mind sharing, what was the number that they had asked for that property?
I believe we settled on 49.
49,000.
Right.
Okay. And then
so
how many beds?
7.
So is it 1 unit or
2 units?
Okay.
Yeah, 2 units. Definitely, within federal housing guidelines and everything like that. Yeah. Not one of these crammed single family homes with 9 bedrooms. 3 of them are made in the basement. Like all this ridiculousness you see, but it was a great first investment. We call it our flagship. We still have it today. It still produces for us today, even though that's a market that's declining. As far as student rentals go over there. So, like I told you before, we're even in contract right now to sell one. And I sold one last year.
Is that just because the college has declining?
That's a loaded question. The college, I believe, is going through a transitionary period.
Yeah. A lot of private colleges, I think, are having trouble.
In our area, yeah. And, in New York in general, when you're competing with free tuition from public schools and mandated by law and all this crazy stuff that's going on, Medaille and Canisius are having a tough time. But that transition was happening just after we got out of school.
Yeah.
So even back then, almost 8, 9, 10 years ago now, that transition was happening. And I can see it in the type of tenants that I had.
Yeah.
And I had to transition just from taking and having a huge demand to pull from to having to market and spread myself to availability to other colleges.
Yeah.
So I had mixes of kids from different area schools. For those of you who don't know, Buffalo has I think it's 9 huge colleges.
Yeah.
Well, huge, but I mean of varying size. Yeah. They might have a population or a student population of 4,500 plus, I think, I don't know, I wouldn't consider, I don't know how many schools, maybe it's more than 9. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the big ones are what? Canisius, UB, Buff State.
UB's like 40,000 with.
That's the biggest one. Yeah. But, UB, Duville, Buff State, Canisius, Medaille, Hilbert to some extent.
So you got this property. What grade are you in? Like what year of college?
I was a sophomore.
So your parents funded it. You convinced them to do that.
Yeah.
And they're probably looking at it like, well, geez, we're going to end up paying close to that much if they're helping you out with room and board, right?
That was the whole story. So it wasn't even room and board. It was the whole kit and caboodle. It was everything. It was to pay for my entire college expense.
Yeah.
And that's the way I built it to them. I said, hey, look, you know what? These are the numbers. I go, I don't know what I'm really talking about here. But I go, this is what I see. This is what I see.
This is the feeling I'm getting.
Yes, this is the feeling. This is the opportunity that's presenting itself in my
So you're thinking you get those 6 other beds rented. You're going to be the landlord, and the income that you got from those 6 tenants was going to cover you not only your mortgage because it was a $49,000 property, but also this private college education.
Correct, and like you said, my room and board. Everything. So I joke with my friends, a lot of them say, oh, you got to go fix a leaky faucet today. You can't make it out. I'm like, no, I got priors, but thanks for paying for my college education. It's just funny,
So that worked out pretty good. Like you got through college and you think it probably came out about even through that period?
It came out more than even.
Yeah.
Like I said, the numbers at those times, the numbers that those properties were producing for your buy-in, I mean, is astronomical.
How much is it? Because I'm sure people are listening like 49,000. Like, what is
it? Was
this?
50 cents on the dollar at that point.
So to fast forward a little bit, just kind of get out of the college phase. When you graduate, do you have just that one property? Or do you have more?
No, we had 3 at that point. So we had done it for myself. We had done it for my sister, who came up and went to Canisius. She was 4 years behind me. And then when I was exiting and graduating from Canisius, I bought one.
Okay.
So my own, solely on my own. So
you got 3 when you graduate. 3. What did you do after that? Like, how did real estate go after that for you?
Real estate became my sole focus. So I got out of school. I went to an internship at a local newspaper.
I feel like you're dating yourself by saying that.
I am the biggest one that we have.
Yeah.
And I did a online video internship there with 2 other great people, started a department, knew the editor at the time, got promised a summer job, which was going to put my foot in the door into a unionized newspaper.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be a great transition from college, doing what I love locally without having to leave. And then I got snowed, and I was really upset. And because I got told one thing, and then at the end of the internship, I get pulled in the office. So, what are you doing for the summer? I go, I'm working here. Remember, 18 hours a week, right? Like cleaning up after everybody's mess, editing videos down, providing, making end products to put out on the website and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, I never said that. I'm like, oh, great, thanks. Yeah. So at that point, I was really, really upset, and I just said to myself, I'm never going to let another person tell me if I can make money or not.
Yeah.
And it changed my course. So after that, I just gave up on digital media, period. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't even know. This is all very familiar to me on the screen right now, but I wouldn't even know what I was doing anymore, which is sad because, Canisius isn't cheap. So, but that's when I really started to go forward in real estate and to try to diversify my income streams and figure out everything I didn't know. It was at that point that I realized I started reading some of the books, and I was like, wow, I know a lot, but I hardly know anything.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I've done really well, and I've been successful, I think, and in my projects that I had taken on and what I had seen for myself, and I wanted to do more. And
how would you say though, like as far as like, because you said you kind of learned all this stuff on your own, which there's value in that, right? That's a really great way of learning. Like you retain things and you take your lumps, but like you think if you had to do it again, if you could have gotten that education up front, like some things would have obviously gone a lot smoother, or you kind of thinking I wouldn't change it the way it went?
The only things I would change are, I would say 3 words to myself. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that you have examples ahead of you sometimes. And I chose to make those examples competitive to myself instead of cooperative to myself.
Mm-hmm.
That was another huge lesson that I learned after college, getting into this business.
Okay.
Was that I had made friends who were investing, and they were around our age group or whatever. Some of them were older. I started to know everybody in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And just for cooperative opportunities or just help each other with, hey, I need a furnace. Hey, do you know a furnace guy or whatever to whomever. And I had some relationships with some people who, for example, the house next door to me got bought out from underneath me. I thought I just didn't try hard enough.
Yeah.
And it got bought by a friend.
Yeah.
And so I was very, very happy for him. He still owns it to this day, I believe, and it's a great property. Huge. But I chose to see some of those things sometimes as a competitive thing instead of a cooperative thing. I should have been working with that guy. I should have been finding out how we could do business together. He was doing the same thing in a neighborhood that I was doing, except he was doing more of it.
Yeah.
And he was learning the second, third, fourth tier things, whether they were investment strategy or where to get money or how to do these deals or all these different things, the real like cogs in the wheel type of thing. And he was making it go for himself.
Yeah.
And I found myself.
And you weren't learning from him because you were competing against him.
I felt like I was competing against him, and that was,
which I think is a
huge lesson to myself.
I think that's kind of like at that age, especially, at least for me personally. I feel like everything's been like a competition, and then as I get older, you start to just realize you're like, no, like we're not competing against each other. It's just you're competing against yourself yesterday. Yeah. And in that situation, if you were, pulling in that knowledge from that person, you yesterday is going to be a further, gap from you today kind of thing.
And that was a tough lesson. And what I learned from that is that And a lot of the stuff you see going around today, like we talked about, some of the major influencers today, they're always talking cooperation as opposed to competition. The only competition you have is yourself. I mean, how many things do you scroll through Instagram that support that kind of notion? So I saw that in real life in my inner workings of trying to build this, and that was a huge lesson to me. Now I try to cooperate with everybody, whether it be in networking is the biggest thing. I mean, that's why I'm so excited to come on here and get on this podcast with you and catch up, is because networking for me has been one of the greatest producers of opportunities in real estate. So it was a weird transition to go.
We've heard that many times in the podcast too, from people where people were like, you know what, it seems old school, but like if people just know that you buy houses, they're suddenly like their aunts are trying to sell and they're like, oh, I know a guy, and like it ends up being a great deal and it works for both parties. And
what sucks about that though is that most of the time those opportunities, and this is a numbers game thing, is that they don't pan out. And that's the only thing that I really have the biggest challenge with real estate now, coming up from back then to now, is I hate to fail.
Yeah.
So it's almost to a point where sometimes I don't want to flesh out some of those opportunities because I smell blood in the water. I'm like, it might not work.
Yeah.
I sometimes set myself up. I sabotage myself sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'll go to a seller and I'll be like, oh, this opportunity came to me. Instead of figuring out a way to get it done.
Yeah.
Sometimes because it's not part of my model that I'm going after now, I let it go prematurely or it falls apart prematurely. And it's only because I hate the numbers game that real estate is. You put out 100 pieces of content or marketing content, and you might get 2-3 calls. And out of those 2-3 calls, you might get 0 opportunities.
Yep.
So it's a numbers game. If you do 1,000 of that, you might get 30 and maybe 5 come back, and then maybe there's 1. So one opportunity to court a seller and actually make a deal.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough. That part of it to me is the hardest part. And that's what I
find that to be the biggest grind.
That's my biggest hurdle, because me personally, I'm not built that way. I'm built that I want to succeed and I don't want to fail. I want to talk to a seller and I want to get that house.
Yeah.
But there's so many factors to buying or getting a property or contracting for a property, actually acquiring it, that, anything could go wrong at any point. So what does it really matter?
Yeah.
I mean, you might as well try,
Yeah.
So that's one of my biggest hurdles that transitions from back then to now is trying to streamline a little bit and also just make sure that I'm giving every opportunity 110% opportunity to become an acquisition or become a deal, and take it on. So it's just one of those things that I've learned over the years. But yeah, after that stint in graduating college, I tried to make real estate, my bread and butter, and it's been tough. I ended up having to take on other jobs and other income streams, just like anybody else, I guess, and then really learn how to get it done.
Yeah. Where are you at now? Like you have other revenue streams, kind of jobs that you still do, or you kind of like, what's the goal? Like when do you want to go full time, just real estate?
Technically I've gone full time a couple of years,
okay,
or maybe a year and a half. But as a young man growing up, you gave up following the field that you spent $100,000 learning how to be in. You took any opportunities that came your way. I decided I wasn't going to go to grad school or take on a medical degree or be a lawyer or any of those things. And maybe I should have gone, looking back, maybe I should have. But yeah, I took on an independent contracting job for a local delivery company. It's not really local. It's a national delivery company, but they have a local branch. And I got courted because I had a minivan, and the guy was looking for drivers, and they had routes that you could do with a minivan.
Yeah.
And so I started, and that's the thing, like everything that I found myself doing, I found myself like emulating some of those notions in some of those books.
Yeah.
Take your expenses and try to make assets out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of expending.
Yeah.
Try to take whatever you had in front of you and generate with it. So I had the minivan. I mean, I was 22, 23. I had a freaking minivan. That's what I had. I mean, and I imagine trying to go out on dates or whatever, and you got a minivan. But,
I don't have any kids.
Yeah, I swear. But it was a 4-cylinder. It was great on gas, and that's what I had.
Yeah.
So I took that as a sign. Hey, I got this thing. I use it, and it's an expense. I have to pay for insurance, gas, everything. But this guy's telling me I can go and make money with it. Well, that sounds great. Let's try that.
Yeah.
So I try to take that philosophy and take it forward. So that's why you asked me about snow plowing and everything like that.
Yep.
That's how I got into snow plowing. I said, well, I wanted to have a truck so that I could do my own repairs and haul material and stuff like that on my properties. And I was like, well, I mean, it's expensive.
Yeah.
It was like $750 a month. It was a brand new truck. It was, but I bought a couple vehicles before that. I fixed them up. I threw them against the truck as equity. I bought the truck. I put a snowplow on it, and I became a snowplow guy.
Yeah.
Just because there was opportunity.
Yeah.
Up here where we're at in the South Towns, it snows. We're on the edge of ski country. It snows like crazy up by where we grew up. So I took that opportunity. So, I mean, but then.
Did you find that you were kind of like using the money that you're creating from snow plowing or from doing the delivery and pumping that back into real estate?
Pumping it back into real estate opportunities.
Yep.
And so it was kind of a backwards type of, roundabout the back way type of way of going about things. I mean, so much you hear about now is generating opportunities that you can share equity with other people to gain, whether you need seed money or acquisition money or rehab money, and kind of share the equity you've built in an acquisition to get it done. Back then I was just trying to amass enough cash to do it all on my own.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was working more than full time during the day delivering, and then I was hopping in the snowplow truck if I got home on time or not, and started plowing till all the wee hours in the morning and sleep for an hour and do it again.
Yeah.
You know how it is out here. We get snow like crazy. And
a
couple of years were lean. A couple of years were really tough.
Yeah.
Last year was that Snowember storm year. And
I'm done.
I'm done.
That probably killed a lot of people.
What killed me was the people.
Yeah.
The clients. I had great clients, great people I worked for, here we do contracts. So a lot of people pick up side work for snow plowing, emergency work or whatever.
Yeah.
But out here, guys run their businesses by taking on clients for a full season by contract. So I had 30, 40 contracts, and I had people paying me on Friday, and it started snowing Monday night, and I couldn't even keep up with it. I couldn't. I just couldn't. It was beyond what I could do.
I mean, most people probably don't remember that because it was like national news, but we had like 7 feet of snow like that. Yeah, dropped in like pretty much like 36 hours or something like that. And so it was just impossible to keep up.
It was.
You're just driving.
Yeah, I made it through half my route in 6.5 or 12 hours.
Yeah.
And my route's supposed to take 3 hours.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was impossible. And it ended up being people just were, and then my first driveway, touch the plow to the pavement. I get jackknifed up on the mound that I'm creating, and my phone flies off the dash out into the driveway, and my screen goes black. So here I am in the biggest snow event ever, and I can't even use my phone to talk to my customers.
Clients, or if you got stranded or something.
Yeah, thank God I had Bluetooth in the truck.
Yeah.
Because I could take calls that way and try to make phone calls that way, work through my phone book list, on my screen, but not on my phone. And it was just like, I made the mistake of giving my home phone number out. Because I wanted to be accountable.
Yeah.
And I just was like, it was the nightmare of all nightmares, man. So I mean, after that, 7.5, 8 feet falls. By that next following Sunday, Monday, it all melted. We did a lot of work. I contracted a lot of payloaders, a lot of skid steers, a lot of friends. I mean, we were just trying to get everybody dug out, and the worst was people's paid money on Tuesday, Wednesday to get their driveway cleared. And on Wednesday at 12 a.m. into Thursday morning, it was filled in 4 feet again within 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
And they were like, what? I'm like, I can't even get down your street to clear that open. They're like, we just paid money to have you open it up.
Yeah.
I go, I know, but I can't even get down the street to get to your driveway to try to keep it open with my truck. Dude, it was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
So that ended in my snow plowing. I finished the season out and had to drop some clients, pay some money back or whatever. I didn't want anybody mad at me because they were all pretty much my neighbors.
Yeah.
But there was just uncontrollable circumstances.
Yeah.
So I did things like that. I had different income streams that I, tried to, live my life, but also save up money to do real estate. And what happened was, after this November storm, like 2013, I had picked up a property in South Buffalo.
Yeah.
51 grand, something like that. And
again, I know somebody's listening right now and being like, what? $51,000?
Oh, South Buffalo is a super hot market right now.
Yeah.
You can still do it. I just picked one up in December for 49, but whatever. So I picked one up and it was going to be the home that I was going to be my home. So I went and we started renovating it, and the upstairs was instantly rentable. We just cleaned it up. So we rented it right away. It was paying my mortgage, paying my my operating
Kinda
expenses.
house hacking it.
Yeah, exactly. It was my first house hack, and I was just like, "This is cool." I can kind of take my time. There's no rush. Everything's paid for, and whatever work I can do to it on my own, I'll do to it on my own. And then it ended up being not so much patching this here and just fixing and repairing that there. It ended up being a pretty massive renovation. It was my first massive full unit renovation.
Okay.
And it took forever. And I was going to live there, so I wanted to do it really nice.
I think I ran into you maybe when you were at some point, because I remember you saying like you were knee deep in some crazy renovation
neck
project.
Deep in lath and plaster.
Yeah.
But that ended up being a learning curve.
Yeah.
And I was.
Did you think you put too much money in it? Because I
definitely put in a lot of money.
Because you lived in there, you wanted it nice, but then after did you still live there?
No.
Yeah.
No,
so
I actually
after
never
you move out.
I actually never moved in.
No.
Don't tell my bank that.
Yeah.
But I never moved in. But no, it was supposed to be, a starter home for my girlfriend and I at the time. We started working on it. Like I said, had the upstairs rented. We were banging away, making it work downstairs. Ended up having to gut the whole place. We ran all the mechanicals. We did a bunch of stuff. And that relationship ended up not working out. I bought the property because she's from that area.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time with my parents and stuff. And so I said, if we're going to build a family, well, we should be near your parents who live down the street, and we can go back and forth. So it was perfect location. And I knew South Buffalo was going to start to come back a little bit. I had a feeling. And it ended up being a great project. I did overspend, but I also didn't think it was going to take that much of a renovation.
Yeah.
So we were just going to go in and kind of just, got the functional areas, the kitchen, the bath. We were going to slap paint on everything else and go, and renew some electric. Well, no, the plaster was failing everywhere. It was just one of these things where everything had to be ripped up.
So like a $50,000 property, how much did you actually put into it for renovation? If you had to guess, I mean, it's probably hard to remember now, but
I don't know the exact number. I got to say it was probably another 50.
Yeah.
Just on one unit. But of course there were mechanics that spread to both units, and there was things that, whatever. So it was a lot of money. Plus it was first time really dealing with contractors. I had contractor come in to really start doing the heavy lifting of it. Once we figured out it wasn't going to be lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
And then he cost a lot of money. He got us to a certain point. He dipped. Then I had to bring someone else in to kind of clean, pick up the pieces. Kind of a handyman guy who knew how to do everything.
Yeah.
And I worked with him, but he ended up being pretty expensive by the end of it. But we got the apartment finished.
Yeah.
And we got it rented. So it was a success from the standpoint that, we were able to acquire it, get it renovated, keep it. I still have it.
A success and another kind of learning experience.
A ton of learning experience. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I really can't stand is watching the shows and seeing the numbers that they put up.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of those numbers are true, but the way that they describe what they've done, they don't account for a lot of the things that expenditures that go into this business.
Yeah.
And being in this business.
Like kitchen, $20,000.
Right.
And you just have this like gorgeous, you're like, maybe if like all those companies want to come in just to be featured on your television show and do a bunch of work for you for free.
Right. And it's just, and in our market now, contractors are at a premium. They know there's all this work to be done now. I mean, and it's like you can't get anybody to come in and do anything for any type of old, handyman or my cousin Joe prices or my uncle can do this type of stuff. Nah. Yeah. These guys are making money. They're putting food on their table. They have families of their own. They have their houses of their own. They have to make money. So it's expensive now to do work. And so the deals have to reflect that. So that was all a learning curve. It was a learning experience on that project, where the other properties that I had previous to that, I had just, done the work myself.
Yeah.
Going back to what I started with in this podcast, with learning how to do it through the men in my family. And so, but now I wanted to run it as a business, and I can't do the work and go out and try to buy properties and, do all this. You won't get anything done.
Yeah. So you had that property, and you've purchased some property since then, sold some. After going through that experience with the contractors and spending too much money probably for the renovations, like what was your next few properties like? Were you doing DIY mostly, or were you starting to get to the point where you had enough equity and investments built up that you were paying people to come in and help you?
We started paying people to come in. So after that property, I linked up with another Canisius landlord who I became friends with. And we started a flipping company. Mm-hmm. And we flipped like 3 local houses, in local municipalities here. And that was TV worthy. That was TV worthy, man. We had a great time. We learned a lot. We made money. It wasn't crazy money by any means. And plus we split everything. So it was tough that way. But it was learning how to work with someone as a partner who isn't family, who is, just their own person. And oh my God, So we ended up doing 3. We were successful in all 3. That was 2016. What happened was the market started to really come up fast. Yeah. And I used to know some numbers. I mean, the median average household sold for like 105 back then, or maybe 103. And it was creeping up. It wasn't creeping up. It was shooting up every month. It was getting crazier and crazier. And this bubble was creating, and the bubble hasn't burst yet. So that was what happened. We thought we were going to sell these houses, and make, 15, 20 grand each. Yeah. Nah. Didn't happen that way. We were supposed to, but it just didn't happen. We did great renovations, really, really, really noteworthy work. And we just didn't see the return. Yeah. There was no multiple bids bidding things up. There wasn't bidding wars. There was actual concessions made. Yeah. Just to get out of these houses and get on to the next thing, What
would you put that to? Like, if you had to look back on that, do you think it was maybe looking at the numbers more, or maybe just the market didn't quite do what you guys thought it would, or just what do you put that on?
The market. Yeah. The houses were great. And everything, man, you walk in, you're like, oh, we're going to do this like, HGTV. Okay, cool. Driveway, this, that, no. By the end of it, there was no room in the budget for a driveway. Yeah. The thing looked like garbage. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was just cracked concrete, just begging to be ripped up and redone, but just no room in the budget to do it. And sellers or buyers would be like, oh, well, are you going to do the driveway? No, this is the house. It's done. It's on the market, Well, for that price, we're not going to take it because it doesn't, it needs the driveway. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. That house now is worth $50,000 more. Yeah. In 2 years. Yeah.
So if you guys had held those 3 properties, you think you would have done pretty well with them then? I mean,
we did well with them as flips. I'm not going to lie. We got out of them. We made profit. But looking back on it now, I was buying and holding before that. I wanted to get in the flips to build up more bank to buy more properties, holds. So, I don't know. If we would have held on to them, sure, the equity gain would have been ridiculous, and we would have had to have rented them for a couple of years. But
if you had a crystal ball,
if I had a crystal ball, if we had the wiggle room, really, I mean, because we were you're sourcing cash privately, as well as our own. And we were putting everything we had into these properties, and then, like I said, they just weren't turning over the way that we thought they were supposed to, per all the news articles that were coming out and everything that was happening and whatever. And so they weren't by any means garbage properties. They were awesome. They were in some really great locations. One was in North Buffalo, right down the street from Rosalima. Okay, near Tacoma and Parkside. And whatever. And we thought it was going to be a $180,000 property. It sold for $155,000. Yeah. I mean, we got into it for like $113,000. Yeah. And we had minimal repair work to do, but again, the margin was slim.
Yeah.
So now that house is worth probably close to double. Stupid. So the thing about the market now is, as an investor, I'm like, what's cool now is that the banks will support the projects because the ARVs are so high.
Yeah.
But you got to get the project for the right price to make the numbers work. That's that's the name of the game for anybody. But at least now in our market, that's why there's such a resurgence in the West Side and all these downtrodden areas for the past 30 years. Is the banks will now, not just private funding, but the banks will now support it.
Yeah.
So you can go to any bank pretty much and get a deal done. But it's been a roller coaster of a ride trying to make it a full-time thing. The only thing I can say is that self-education is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And
well, you just kind of accelerate some of those, learning mistakes that you kind of went through, and you might have been able to kind of just, you're still going to take some lumps. You're going to read every book and every course and everything. You're still going to take lumps, but
you're going to take lumps. There's going to be unforeseen things that you just don't know how, like I said, with the contractors, sometimes you just open up a wall and now you have a framing component and you're like, okay, shoot, here's $1,500. Like, it needs to be done. You can't not do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's like, and that's when you go to court sellers and they're like, you think this is going to take $45,000? Like, yeah, it might even take 50. Like, you just, that's what it is. It's the reality of the business. And it's tough because they see that their house could sell for 150.
Yeah.
And you're coming in super low and you're like, yeah, but I need to make money here. Like, are you going to go and do all this work? Like, I would hope that you could or that you would. I would like to see you translate your equity for yourself. Sure. But are you going to do that?
Yeah.
Is that why we're sitting here having a conversation about acquiring your house? Like, the reality for people who aren't in the business is very, no one has a grasp. And the TV shows don't help that sometimes. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's only people who are in these industries that kind of see it and they're like, yeah, I get it. Okay. So that's always the biggest hurdle with sellers or acquisition is trying to get people to get on your page with what the market's doing, with what it costs to do the work. Grandma's house needs $45,000. Sorry, that's just the truth of it. If you can get it done in 40, great. I would hope that you could, but I just know that my guys are going to come in. Labor costs $320 a day for one guy.
Yeah.
And that's just general labor. Like, once you add your, your workman's comp and your this and that. So the realities of the situation that I've grown into trying to prolong, keep the business, keep it as a career, do it full time.
Yeah.
It's just crazy that, the things you learn.
At this point, you just sold off a few units. You got about 10 units. Where do you see yourself going? Just kind of continuing to climb and grind and, adding properties, or you got a certain number in mind? You got a certain exit plan in mind?
Yeah.
What do you think?
My first real goal is probably like 10K a month in residual cash flow, just income.
Yeah.
From rentals, not from equity gains or anything like that, just from positive cash flow. I've met a lot of different people over the years who see real estate in different ways.
Yeah.
And what might work for them doesn't work for me. The way that they acquire properties scares me.
Yeah.
The way I do things, they just haven't found the type of opportunities to do it that way.
Yeah.
The thing about real estate is just, it's 900 million ways to do it.
Yeah.
And so what's cool about that is that, anybody can pretty much do this stuff. But what I've seen for myself is that I still want to stick to that goal. I want to grow my rental portfolio. And I've found that flipping properties for chunks of cash to then use to acquire properties, cash is king.
Yeah.
You go to a seller, they want a fast close. They want cash in their pocket normally. Sometimes it's tough to sell them a carryback or, a seller finance or some type of creative, situation that benefits me. So, although I've done it, I've actually built a lot of my rental property portfolio on that. So, it's one of these things where I'm going to grow that. I'm going to continue to buy properties. I'm going to continue to try to rent them or flip them and just try to grow it to a point where my financial independence is secured.
Yeah.
And then see what happens. I mean, I don't know, this market that we're in here, this equity bubble, if you will, that we're experiencing is going to shift. I mean, it just, you can't, I mean, how much higher can you go? Not everybody can buy an $800,000 house. So, the jobs here just don't support that. And I wish that they would come in, and I wish that they would, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
So I think that we're going to see a little bit of a downturn here. I think the market's going to correct itself is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to continue to grow. I'm going to continue to try to, buy property, creatively and create equity for myself and create cash flow for myself. And try to learn how to do it a little bit differently each time. Yeah. Increase the margins of success.
Yeah. I love it. I think some of the things that kind of stood out to me, I love I ask you, what would you think? And you're like, 3 words, don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. That's my biggest problem. That's my biggest hurdle is don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. Yeah. There's some people who just don't care. That's their emotional makeup or their life experiences. Yep.
They've already seen rock bottom maybe, and they're like, hey, I don't care. I'll go back. Yeah. Let's swing for the fences.
But we're gonna go after this, or whatever. Me, I'm a slow player. I'm a little bit more calculated. I don't take as many risks. I want to have a success rate of 100%. Yep. Especially when you're dealing with other people's money. I don't want to lose it on them. You know what I mean? And I don't want to be nailed to the wall, trying to get it back to them or anything like that. I want to have 100% success rate, and I have. So, I'm a little bit different. And like I said, you can do this 900 million different kind of ways. Yeah. And I want to learn some of these ways so that, I can grow this a little bit differently. Maybe in 5 years, I look, my outlook, it just looks different. You know what I mean? The atmosphere of it looks different.
I think one of the things that I always kind of look at for myself, and admittedly, I'm not an avid real estate investor. I kind of house hack my way out of a double and then into my permanent home, and that's kind of works for me. But just from like a personal standpoint, I always just kind of look at things and be like, I almost want to be like, not embarrassed, but like every time I look back at myself 3 to 5 years ago, I want to just think, wow, like who is that person? Whereas because you're growing, and that's what it sounds like if you could have done that every 5 years in real estate and look back 5 years ago, you'd be like, oh, I can't believe I did that. I would never do that again. But if you're saying that every 3 to 5 years, that means you're continuing to learn, you're continuing to improve so that you're a better investor when you're 35, 40, 45, 50, 55,
Correct. So you continue to grow, you continue to, create equity, create income for yourself, create opportunities that just didn't, take advantage maybe of some opportunities that you wouldn't have been able to 5 years or 3 years ago. Yeah. So and what kicks up me, this is the toughest thing about our market is that we should have bought everything and anything 5, 3, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have been, don't be afraid. I shouldn't have been so slow. You know what I mean? I should have found a system that worked like I did, but I should have fine-tuned it a little bit more so that I maybe tripled my, my productivity or something like that.
That's the same thing you can look at where people are like, oh, if I bought Google 20 years ago.
Sure.
They probably weren't even a stock 20 years ago.
But being invested where you are, the numbers are ridiculous right now. It's like, and 10 years ago, I was running in and out of all those houses trying to buy one for 40, for 50, for 60, for 80. And you're frugal with my money, right? Yeah. And I'm building my money up myself. I'm not using investors' money all the time. So back then, so now I'm like, well, shoot. And you're looking at different areas of our market too, and you're comparing. And that's the problem with growing up in an off-campus investment situation, was that the money was just ridiculous. The numbers are just ridiculous, just out of hand. Yeah. They're at the top of the heap for that type of product. So, I was jaded a little bit. I could never find a kind of like you guys college off campus rental situation.
And, it's literally
the
high wasn't as good the second and third time.
And then you think in your head, is it worth it? I've already done this. Well, can I recreate it? Mm-hmm. And what I had to learn is that I had to adjust my minimum standards. The self-education part was a lot of like podcasts and not so much books, because I was driving 10, 12 hours a day. So I'd listen to podcasts. I found some really, really great ones that were free that actually had some valuable content. Yeah. Not just fluff or not just, some super ridiculous salesman
I'm
kind of
laughing right now because I'm like, oh, as we're on a podcast, he's like, there was actually a podcast that was helpful.
I mean, you know,
well, I think, you know, it's like somebody's going to listen to this, right? And some people might be able to listen to you talk and be like, oh, that's a good idea. Like, that's something I might want to pursue, or I haven't thought about it that way. Or somebody else might just listen to it and say, you know what? Like, this guy's in the same soup as me. Yeah. And it just, you understand that it just makes you feel like you're not alone, and like you're working through the same issues and the same successes, you know, and it's just kind of learning as you go and improving things and just kind of building towards a brighter future because of it.
And at the end of the day, we all got the same 24 hours. Yeah. And we're all experiencing some of the same things. And that's why I love these type of platforms, is because you can relate to people. Yep. You can see things. Oh, I don't need to deal with that. Or I want to try to get myself into that situation like so-and-so's talking about, or, you know, you see opportunities of where to go up the ladder. You know, a couple of podcast guys like, oh yeah, I'm flipping 15 houses a month and I'm like, whoa, I was doing 3 a year. Like, how do you do that? And then, you know, through networking, you see people who are doing 5 a month and you're like, I'm impressed with that. Yeah. I might not want to be that. Yeah. Or maybe I do want to be that. Yeah. Or I want to have those headaches, or I want to have that, you know, that lifestyle, or maybe you don't, you know, so it's important to do things like this. It's important to share and cooperate, because you help people along the way, and it's helpful to me. Yeah.
You're helping yourself too.
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, if I didn't have those opportunities or taken that content back then or now or whenever, I wouldn't have, benefited the same, you know? Yeah. So it's important, but it's just amazing. You know, I see all the books that you have, you know, and all the opportunity that's sitting here in the office just in print, and the way that someone can change their mind, you know, and then change their physicality, like their footprint on the ground, you know, in real life. And it's important. I think that, especially nowadays, people are really, really looking for positive change and energy that affects their lives or their families' lives, you know, in a positive, fruitful way. And, you know, just
have control over it.
And have control over it, just like you did. You said you house hacked your way into a secondary family home. Yep. And, you know, one of the things for people our age group is, how do I maximize these two incomes that I've created through marriage or whatever you're doing? Yeah. And you're creating this family and your expenses are rising. Yep. But maybe your daily job, your income it's not matching the rise in expense or whatever you're taking on the other side of it in your life. And one of the things that people can do is they can invest in the home, and they can make it, instead of making it an expenditure, they can turn it into an equity building asset. Yeah. And just like you did with a double. And it's some of these strategies or some of these ways about going things that can change people's lives and help them, you know, progress. And then you look back on it when you're 40, 45 and you're like, yeah, I've done this. Like you know,
well, I know for me, like just like living in the double, there was times where I'm like, oh, it's so loud in here. I hate living underneath somebody. This is awful. I'm getting too old for this. I hate it, blah, blah, blah.
You're ready for your single family home.
Yeah. And then like, you don't realize it's not that long of a time, you know, because then when you look back, you're like, oh, I feel like I lived there for a minute. And now it's like, I get to live in a nicer home. It suits my needs better. And you have a property that's paying for both the mortgages, you know?
Yeah. And you were able to create that. It's about, you know, you hear it in different ways all the way across the board in books and podcasts and in media that's hitting everybody every day. It's one of these things where, you know, what opportunities are sitting in front of you. You know, a lot of people don't know when they get themselves into something like that, what they can do with it. Yeah. And so one of my things has been going forward is I share with people who are in our age group. It's like, well, how do you maximize what do you have? How do you maximize what you have? You know, and if you're in a family situation, you don't always have all the time to go get a second job or create secondary sources of income for yourself. But maybe you've got a home that you've paid into for 7 years and the market's changed around you. And maybe you never looked at what your whole neighbor's house sold for. Yeah. You know, and that's the thing about real estate is it seems like everybody's an expert on it in their neighborhood for their 5 houses that they live around. But what are you really doing with that? You know, and I commend you for seeing a situation that you got yourself into and then building off of it and increasing the quality of your life.
No, I appreciate it, but I mean, I'm super impressed by you because you've jumped in both feet into the deep end on numerous different types of projects too. It's not like you just did, college real estate, or you just did flips, or you're all over the place and you're learning and
still
growing.
Small, still one man operation. I mean, I'm not one man operation. I mean, I'm in this with my family and invested with my family too, and we all have jobs that we perform, but it's just one of those things where people think one way about it or whatever, but I'm just sitting here over here like, hey, you know what? There's someone who I say that about who I think is just fabulous. You know what I mean? They're killing it, whatever. And to me, it's just small potatoes. We're just trying to make more with what we got, but I appreciate that because at the end of the day, it's one of my motivating factors, to hear people say nice things. That's what's cool about social media. I spend way too much time on it, providing no value whatsoever to myself, but I, except for a few laughs, but people always say, going back to networking, they're like, hey, I saw you post that renovation you did or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that was a really challenging one, whatever. It turned out great, got the highest rent in that municipality that could ever be, has ever happened type of thing. And they're like, yeah, well, like you said, my grandmother's house or my aunt's house or this, that. And it's, I don't think I ever want to be like this crazy social media, presence, and spend a lot of time putting everything that I do out there. That's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. A lot of self-promotion.
A lot of self-promotion. It's, a lot of people see it as selling out, but there's a lot of people genuinely out there doing it, but it's just a lot of work. I got a lot on my plate already. I don't need to be constantly putting myself out there. But I'll tell you what, every single time that I have, it's generated something for me.
Yeah.
So maybe I should change my mind on it. My mind on it.
You know what? I think that'll be a great little nugget to leave the podcast on. So you know what? Maybe I talk to you in a year or something on the podcast, and you're like, hey, you know what? I doubled down on social media and I got 100 houses now.
Hopefully. Knock on wood.
Well, Jesse, thank you. Thank you for being on the podcast and sharing your story. It's been awesome. It's been great just catching up too.
Yeah, great catching up. We should do more of this, man. For sure.
Sounds good.
Appreciate it.